On your home screen, you have transactions for leads, listings, and buyers and sellers that are under contract. In order to navigate these different transactions throughout the system, you would use the Change Status feature. Each transaction record has a link to change status, and there are three different options: fell through, inactive, and close and archive. Let's start with inactive. Here I've got the transaction for my buyer lead, Bobby Buying Now, pulled up. Let's say that Bobby is not going to buy now, but he's going to buy about 6 months to a year from now, and we no longer want him to show up on our home screen. We would select inactive, save it, and Bobby Buying Now will no longer be on our home screen, but will still be in the contact database. Next, let's take a look at the fell through status change. Fell through is going to apply to both listings and contracts. If we have a listing that falls through, let's say it expired, we would change status to fell through and save it. And now that transaction record will no longer show up under listings, but it will still show up under the leads section because there's still a seller lead for us for the future. Now, if we have a buyer or a seller under contract and it falls through, this works exactly the same way. We would change the status to fell through, and now Henry Happy House is no longer under contract, but he does still show up down in our leads section. Now, if we have a seller under contract that falls through, change the status to fell through. That seller no longer shows up under contracts, but they will now show up as a listing because we still have the listing. And the final status change possibility is close and archive, which you'll use once your contract has closed. When we select this, if it's a buyer under contract, the closing day will automatically populate in this window so that we'll be reminded of their home anniversary date each year after this. And once we save it, we will go to Archives, and that transaction will appear in our Archives section. A couple of things about archives. If you inadvertently archive a transaction that wasn't supposed to be archived, you can always click on the Restore button and it will populate back on the home page. It's also important to note that all of the contract dates, details, and documents are still accessible even when they're archived. This also holds true for your buyers and sellers. They can still access all of their contract documents even after closing, as long as, in their contact information, Allow Client Access is still checked. If you ever want to cease their access, you simply uncheck that box. So in conclusion, use the inactive status change to move the transaction off of the home page, but keep their information in your contact database. Use fell through for your listings that expire and for your buyers and sellers under contract that fall through, and close and archive whenever the contract is closed.